Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey, and today we are celebrating the return of our production manager, Michael, from his world-crossing tour to find the Squatch. Michael, what was it like looking for Sasquatch, and what did you find? Is he nice?
It was pretty amazing. I trekked through the jungles of James's basement and found the Sasquatch there. But then he imprisoned me for like a couple of months, and then I don't know.
Well, it's been great to have James on the show, so, whatever it takes. And I guess it's nice that you escaped. So welcome back to the show. And today we're going to be doing a live Q&A. I know we weren't scheduled for it, but we're doing it anyway. We're going to be answering some questions that have come up on the show. And we're also going to be showing off a really interesting new tool that was mailed to me that I'm excited to play around with because it's a Wi-Fi hacking tool. It's based on the ESP32. And I think it's a really interesting way of getting started analyzing Bluetooth devices, Wi-Fi devices, and a little bit more. So let's go ahead and get started. Also, hello to everybody in the chat. It's great to see Zam, 8-Bit Oni, and everybody else there. So let's see. Today, I think I'm going to start with the Marauder. Where is it? Where do we put it?
Right in front of you.
All right. So this is a concept that I had heard about from my friend Stefan. This is a mutual friend of ours has been working on the ESP32 Marauder, and I'll hold it up here. And it's got kind of like a Nintendo DS style interface. So this project is based on a couple different microcontrollers inside. And, I'd never really heard of this. I thought oh, this is kind of cool. And Stefan was telling me, hey, this dude is working on some really cool stuff. It's not the same as the Deauthor. It's a totally different branch of research. And you should check it out. So I added the guy on Instagram and has been keeping an eye on the project, and eventually he offered to send me one. So, and this is what I got. So I got two of them, two different types. There's one of them that has an antenna that you can attach right here. So if you want to add on a special antenna or something, and then there's another one that doesn't. They have 3D printed cases. They're definitely kind of chunky, they're the size of a Raspberry Pi, maybe something like that. Yeah. And yeah, overall, this was something that I was excited to see what the form factor was. So when you get it, you can press the button. There's a little button on the inside here, and it also comes with a little Nintendo DS stylus.
Did you want to try our handy cam to show off this stuff?
Okay, so in order to show this off today, we're trying off something brand new. We've secured a GoPro Hero, and even though it is terrible and we hate using it and is stressful, we're going to try to use it to show you what this actually looks like. So let me put this move your mouse, I guess. All right, so I'm going to try to put this here, and let's see if we can switch over to this camera. Yeah, look at that. We've never done this before. Wow. If I press the button, hopefully I charged it. We get the ESP Marauder. It starts running. You can see it's looking for hardware.
I wonder if I shade it. Will that do the reflection?
No,
a little.
It won't really help. Yeah. But yeah, so it checks to see what hardware is on board. It's capable of taking an SD card. And then you get this. This is actually a pretty slick interface. I was amazed by the fact that the person who designed this actually had the presence of mind to design a really good user interface and make it so that it's pretty simple to go through the menu. So I'm going to try to do this without being able to see. So you can see there's
is it actually touchscreen?
It's a touchscreen. Oh. Look at that. Isn't that slick?
I'm hacking in the future now.
Yeah. So if you've used a Nintendo DS or something, the interface should be pretty familiar. You can see I'm going to try to select Bluetooth without looking. There we go, nice. Bluetooth. And I can also do sniffer. And this will start sniffing Bluetooth detector, sniffing Bluetooth devices, but also it will detect card skimmers. So this is really cool. So if you're at a gas station or something, or somewhere else where you think there might be a card skimmer, you can use this device to actually look for Bluetooth signatures that match that of known card skimmers. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's looking, it's hunting. Of course, there's no card skimmers here. At least I hope that, Michael, there better not be any card skimmers here.
You don't know what I do in my free time.
Yeah. So obviously, you guys can't see too super well, but you can see the general layout. And of course, it's just saying no card skimmers found. But there's a little X to go back, and there's basically everything you would look for in a pretty simple decent user interface. So I'll tap it. When I tap it, it goes back. I don't know. I think this is super cool, and I want to just kind of go through some of the other modes while we're here. So, Michael, any questions about the
Yeah, so
Marauder?
so I'm assuming this is like an open source project.
Yes.
Yeah, so can you like make your own modules to install on it then, or
You can't because you don't know how to program, but someone who programs probably could.
okay, if I hired Stefan.
Yeah, if
So
you hired Stefan.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Right. So you can see also that this can operate as a bad USB. This is something I haven't tested yet, but I'm really interested in. So let's see. I'm gonna try.
So could it be like a Wi-Fi duck with a touch screen?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Come on. Bad USB. Okay, so I can test USB or run Duckyscript. That I think is really cool. So it looks like if I wanted to just plug this in, and there's a USB Type-C interface here, which I think is really slick. Oh, what?
There's a
Sorry,
whole touch screen.
I never even tried this. So it lets you write Duckyscript on the fly. Are you kidding
pretty
me?
cool.
That's actually really cool. So I never.
Do you know how much memory this has? Because I feel
I
like
have no idea.
this-
Oh, but it takes an SD card.
Oh, okay. So, because that's why I was thinking one of the limitations of using an ESP would be is you wouldn't be able to like install a bunch of programs on it all at once. But if you have a SD card, I imagine you could like make as many of these types of programs as you want.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link, which we'll go to in just a second, just so you guys can like see what I'm talking about and like more documentation on this project. Here we go. I just dropped it in the chat. But as you can see, like this has a mode, so you can plug this into another computer and then just type out some Duckyscript and then press run, and that should allow you to run as a bad USB device. Now, the reason it can do that, I believe, is because it has like an ATmega34U in it, so it can decide to pretend to be whatever kind of keyboard you want. But yeah, this is really, really cool. And also, in response to the question, where can you find these? Let me drop the link to the Tindy. So there's two different like manifestations to this. This is both an open source project that, you know, if you wanted to, you can just like make yourself thank you.
Yeah.
But also this is something you can just buy from the creator on Tindy if you want to support him. So yeah, I think this is really cool. Obviously it's like pretty big, but the point is it's big enough that you could use this to type something. So let me just try typing. I'm just going to type HELLO space WORLD. That was actually super easy to type. So I have to say, like, if you're competent with a little stylus and you practice with it, like, I think you could write a quick script, you know, in a coffee shop or something, if this was the only device you had with you, and then plug in like a USB cable to it and be able to run it. Yeah, I think that's super cool. Now, let's talk about things that this cannot do. So there's definitely a couple things that this can't do. And one of them, actually, let me press check.
So basically, I need to be watching out with Rehoboam to make sure that I don't find one of these plugged in.
Oh, of course. But again, they're huge. So
Yeah.
let me go to general apps.
I mean, just
Oh, and also you can draw. I'm sorry. That's excellent. You can just draw if you want to.
just on the surface, this seems like a really cool thing to maybe give to like kids or someone like that to get them interested in like hacking. Like, I don't know what the price point on Tindy is, but I can't imagine that this is like too costly. Wow.
I ran out of
Okay.
space. I ran out of space.
We have a real artist going on over here.
I ran out of space, you guys. But as you can see, you can draw whatever you want. You can make messages. You can send someone a message if you want to communicate something to them. But yeah, so like this comes with some extra applications. There's a little thing in the corner which I suspect will let me exit. I hope, please. The one thing I'm waiting for is some sort of like anytime there's an open source project, like there tends to be like a part where the person forgot to let you escape. And in this case, I think I found it.
This reminds me of my first experience with Vim. It's like, wait, how do I exit this?
Help! All right, so as you can see, I now have figured out a place where there's no clear way to exit. So again, this is an open source project. I also have figured out that if I ever trap myself, I can just press the button twice. Or once long, or some combination of frantically pressing, and it'll just restart itself. And since it's a microcontroller, it's not like I'm saving a bunch of data on here.
Yeah.
So, all right, so restarting. Let's say that we wanted to use this for something that was a little bit more interesting. Like, let's say that we wanted to do some password grabbing for a Wi-Fi network. Well, this actually can do that in a somewhat limited fashion. So let's take a look at how that would work. So I'm not actually going to do, well, I mean, it's such terrible resolution. You guys probably can't see anything anyway. So let's play dangerously. I'm going to go to Wi-Fi. And you can see there's a couple different things we can do. We can do sniffers, attacks, or general. Now, attacks is kind of a misnomer here. I would say annoyances would be a better way. So we can beacon spam is basically what we can do here. We can rickroll, we can beacon spam random, and we can beacon spam
Does it deal
OS.
with, I'm assuming?
No, and I will explain why.
Oh.
Calm yourself. All right, so we're currently rickrolling. We're rickrolling like crazy. Excellent, excellent, excellent. If I go over to my Wi-Fi and just look real quick.
Should I?
No, you should not, because I don't want to show
yeah.
all the networks in our area. But I can see never gonna run around, never gonna make you cry.
Oh,
And
so it does the entire lyrics.
Yeah, they're even numbered too, in case like I get confused about which order to read them.
Okay.
Number 4, and desert you. Okay, so yes, this is currently rickrolling. Is that an attack? Some would say it's an affront. Some would say it's an aberration. But no, I would not call this like an attack in terms of like degrading network performance or something else. Could this be upgraded to do that? Yes. So based on research by Matthew Van Hoff, there are ways of using beacon frames to attack networks and network devices to make it so that you can affect a device's ability to connect. So that generally could be an upgrade to this to allow it to do some stuff that it currently cannot do. But let me go ahead and touch screen to exit. If we take let me go back, and we can see if I tap on sniffers, this is where things kind of get interesting here. So we have the ability to beacon sniff, deauth sniff. So if we want to know if somebody is attacking the local network, we can do that here. And we can basically look for attack packets coming from maybe like a Wi-Fi deauther or something like that. So we can detect expressive devices. This is actually really interesting. This will allow us to do a search for MAC addresses matching expressive devices like the ESP32 or the ESP8266. This is basically like a deauthor detector. So of course here we have tons of like weird security cameras and like other like whack stuff that's running off of this chipset. So this is currently detecting lots of those devices. Maybe it's even detecting itself. Who knows? It's probably not though. So because we have so many microcontrollers running in our area, it's detecting a crazy amount of them. And we should be able, is this, so this isn't giving signal strength, so we would have a little bit of an issue actually tracking it down. But we can also see this has the ability to detect the Ponagachi. So if you're worried about someone using one of those, then that's really interesting. We have packet monitor, so that will just tell you how much traffic is on any given channel. Deauth sniffer, beacon sniffer, and then probe request sniffer. So probe request sniffer is interesting. This will let you know the Wi-Fi networks that nearby devices are trying to join, even if they're not successful. So if I were to turn this on, you would see all the devices that my laptop, Michael's laptop, and our cell phones had connected to in the past that our phones were then trying to connect to now. And this would be useful for a hacker, for example, if we wanted to pop up like a fake network and then like attack anybody who joins that network or something like that. So there is one thing that's notably missing here, and that is the ability to deauth. And that is because this is based on the ESP32. The ESP32 has a different chipset, or not different chipset, but it has a different firmware than the ESP8266. The ESP8266 has been modified to the point that basically anybody can get it to send arbitrary packets thanks to our good friend Stefan and some of the modifications he's done. The ESP32 is not the same. And until you reverse engineer the firmware, you're not going to be able to get it to send deauthentication packets. That being said, it does have the ability to do ePOL/PMKID scan. So if I tap this, what it will do is it will attempt to grab handshakes as devices automatically connect to a network. We're not kicking them off, so we might have to wait a really long time, or we might have to use a companion device, like maybe like a Wi-Fi deauthor to kick devices off, and then this to like gather the handshakes. But in general, like I think that this is still a pretty useful way of grabbing a handshake that you could then go take back and attempt to crack.
I was gonna say, if you want to be a real budget hacker man, you could get the deauthor watch and then have this as well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like that total wouldn't cost you more than like 150, and then you have deauth capability and capture the handshake.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is I don't know. I think that this is still a really useful device, even though it doesn't have deauthentication, because it has virtually everything else, and they've really put a lot of thought into making this into an interesting and useful device. So if you want to check it out, it's called the ESP32 Marauder. We'll go ahead and take a look at the documentation, but I just wanted to go over like the main features of this before doing so.
And you said that it can take an external antenna. So is there a way like in the settings to turn on the signal strength? Because I feel like this would be a pretty cool device for like fox hunting, signal kind of tracking down stuff.
No. So I have two different suggestions, I guess, for how this could be even better. One of them would be that. Like if you had the ability to do that, I think it would be better.
Yeah, because this, I think during the holiday episode, I talked about the dope scope, and that's basically all it was, is a ESP with a little screen and a directional finder, so you just hold it up to your eye and you could look around and see the signal strength of things. Yeah. So I definitely think there's a use case for that sort of thing. And we've even done previous live streams where we tracked down malicious packages, like physical packages sent in the mail with like a rogue access point inside.
Yeah, and so I think if you added the ability to do like signal strength monitoring on this, you would be able to fox hunt with this, and that would be super cool. I love the ability to like look for like credit card skimmers and that sort of thing. I love the ability to hunt expressive devices and other sorts of like Ponagachi or like other devices that might be known hacking devices. So this has some like blue team potential. Overall, this is a really cool project. So if you want to support the creator, let's go ahead and switch over to my screen. You can see this Tindy link that I dropped is the, looks like it's out of stock. Hopefully there's more. Is the ESP32 Marauder. There's multiple versions of it, and it looks like, they are working on the next drop. So I've seen some stuff on his Instagram, so I think that there's going to be more available pretty soon. But overall, you can check out the design here, and then if you're interested in the open source software, this is the documentation on GitHub. And you can see that the goal is to be a series of a suite of Wi-Fi / Bluetooth offensive and defensive tools for the ESP32. Now, there's also some interesting developments with the ESP32. Our good friend Stefan has found some interesting ways of making the ESP32 do things that it was never designed to do. So hopefully we're looking at some expanded capabilities in the future for the ESP32 that might trickle down to other devices like the ESP32 Marauder. So if you're looking for deauthentication and other stuff that's currently not possible, that may change in the somewhat near future, which is really cool.
And with it being out of stock, like how easy would this be to like put one together yourself?
So I would have to check out the project wiki, and I imagine, so there is a hardware section. Okay. So it looks like, let's see, stock and hardware modifications to be made. This is using chips that are relatively easy to get, but we do have to point out that there is a shortage. Yeah. So if you haven't heard about the shortage, any open source project like this is going to be affected by it. We ourselves, resell Stefan's Andromeda deauthor, and for a while it seemed like we would have as many as we wanted. But recently we've had to buy a whole bunch of them in anticipation of running out, because we know that the components that are needed to make these things are suddenly becoming 4, 5, 10 times more expensive, and it makes it impossible to sell them at the cost that people are willing to buy them. So a lot of small projects like this, or open source projects, are currently going through a crunch where it's very hard for them to buy the components they need to make these boards. So if there is another drop of ESP32 Marauders coming out, then maybe buy them sooner rather than later. But if you're looking to do an open source version of it, then buying the requisite chips, which is the ESP32 and then the ATmega 38, whatever, it's in the documentation. Getting the correct chips sooner rather than later would be a good idea, because the prices on everything are kind of skyrocketing for these development boards. Even like the little serial chips and the other things that are essential but like just don't seem like a big deal are suddenly becoming so expensive that it makes it difficult to produce projects like this. So just a little word of warning as to the current chip shortage.
And I imagine like there's a custom It looks like there's a custom PCB in here, maybe. I can't quite tell.
Oh, and also everyone can start asking questions whenever you want. We were
Yeah.
just wanted to show off this awesome project. I've been waiting for this for quite some time, and when I actually got it in the mail, I wanted to put it through its paces and also show everyone who hasn't seen it before. So yes, go ahead and ask your questions in the chat. We'll go ahead and get started, maybe answering the first one from the videos.
Oh, yes.
So these
yes,
are
we can
compiled
do that.
from the videos that we have up on YouTube. Of course, like we end up with quite a quite a backlog of them.
Yeah.
So I believe our first question was,
So it is, could you explain how to block someone who has hacked your Android phone? And then they say, like, using your phone number. So basically, the way I'm going to send this to you is, how can you protect your Android phone from being hacked?
okay, that's a much more simple question.
Yeah.
For one, don't root it. There's lots of people who want to like root their phone for like research or like trying stuff. And if it's your primary phone, it just instantly makes it much, much, much more vulnerable. Any piece of malware, any piece of spyware can suddenly get root access to your phone and start doing much more nefarious things. So you don't want to set up a situation where your phone is more vulnerable than the average phone. So that's just one thing. Next, I would say don't install like apps out of the main like usual sources. Often like bootlegged software or other sorts of like software that you don't get from traditional sources will just be laced with malware, because why not? Like there's if they bypass like normal installation processes, or if they have like a vulnerability that hasn't been discovered yet, like it's really sketchy to be installing applications that way. Aside from that,
Yeah, I would definitely agree
it's
with
more
like
preventative.
the APK thing. Like, if you're having to install that, be very careful. You know, if you can check the code or whatever, do something like that. Also, I don't know that it really applies directly to your phone being hacked, but like if you get a random text message from someone with a link in it, like don't just immediately click on that.
Yes.
That's a good way to get hacked.
Yeah, I was going to say, the last thing I'd say is if you get a suspicious link, run it through one of those like link expanders, like VirusTotal has one. If I get like a phishing email, there's 0-day vulnerabilities that affect mobile browsers. So somebody will figure out that like how to exploit Chrome or Firefox or whatever, and then try to target people with malicious links that use the exploit in the browser. So don't trust them. Like if you can expand the URL and see where it goes, if it's nowhere that you want to be, don't click on it. So one question was, any good mitigation you're aware of against a deauthentication attack over Wi-Fi? So this is a good question, because this is probably the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to Wi-Fi attacks. That's available to everybody. It's really cheap. It's really easy to do. And, you know, unless you know to look for it, it can be somewhat difficult. I'm kidding, not really. It's really easy to detect. Like even with like a ESP32 microcontroller, like you can set up a deauth detector that will go off and like make a light go off like anytime someone's attacking your network. So detection is relatively easy. The next thing is like, what do you want to do in response to it? Well, as Zam suggested in the chat, you can upgrade to 802.11w. 802.11w is a standard that has protected management frames, which means that those deauthentication packets now need to be signed basically in order to be acted upon by devices that are connected to your Wi-Fi network. So if you enable this, then it means that it's not possible anymore to just sit on the perimeter of a network and start attacking a device on the inside by telling it, hey, I'm the router, disconnect from the network.
Right.
Now, there's some other upgrades as well. If you're able to upgrade to WPA3, deauthentication is not a problem, because they have encrypted management frames. It's just like part of the design of that system. So if you want to upgrade to WPA3 and you're capable of doing so, then this is a solved problem essentially in WPA3. Some other options also are if you happen to have the Andromeda deauther or something else that allows you to mount an antenna that's directional, you can track down the physical source and just ask them to stop sternly. Perhaps that will work as well. And honestly, it might be worth tracking down the location of whatever this is anyway, because maybe maybe it's a malfunctioning device that is causing problems. Like you would be amazed how many times someone will be like, oh no, I'm under attack. Like a hacker is attacking my network day and night. It's causing havoc. And then like the hacker is like a Cisco router or something that's been misconfigured and thinks that like somebody else's Wi-Fi network is like an intruder and starts like deauthenticating it to like protect like a network that's not there. Like there's lots of cases where an access point is totally capable of sending deauthentication packets. And sometimes if they're misconfigured, they'll be defending or something, but they're actually attacking a peripheral network or peripheral devices.
Yeah.
So this happens like pretty often, and honestly, tracking down the source of a deauthentication attack, if it is really persistent and common, is probably something that would be pretty useful to you. Yeah, I mean, if someone's just occasionally like throwing rocks at your network, then like hardening it more would probably be a good idea with 802.11w. But if you just have a single source that's the problem and it's persistent, then tracking down where it's coming from is probably a good idea. And again, you can do that with the Andromeda deauther, since it has a detachable antenna, which you can mount a directional one on. And you can get one of those on Spacehoon's store at spacehoon.store.
Okay.
He's better at branding than we are.
Yeah. And then a quick question: when is Cody getting his haircut?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So this is
Very soon.
This is 1 year of growth. I'm very sad to see it go, but I think somewhere around May 20 something, like, is when I'm going to be getting my haircut. So sorry, you guys, if you've enjoyed my country mullet over the last year, I'm going to be going back to Los Angeles, and I'm going to have to blend. So
yeah. Okay. Next question: how do we stay private and secure when we need to use apps or software that has vulnerabilities like Snapchat, Facebook, Zoom, etc.? I'm finding it hard to not use these because of friends, work, etc.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's really difficult not to use these, and I try to minimize like what social media platforms I use. But I would say the best thing you can do, if you can afford to do it, is segmentation or separation of work and school computers. If you're going to have a personal computer, like, you need to be aware that what you put into it is going to be probably tied together. You know, if you're like, we produce a lot of content, so like that means being on platforms like TikTok and other things that like really gather a ton of data and get right up in your face with trying to like profile you and like string together any data that you give it whatsoever. So these very aggressive data aggregators will eventually succeed if you interact with them enough. So you just need to realize that if you're trying to stay hidden from these services, you need to separate your important data away from the stuff that you maybe don't care about as much. Because if you're going to make that kind of compromise, you need to set some limits. Otherwise, it's a very slippery slope into just having everything on one computer. I try to keep my work stuff on a computer that has all the required stuff, and then my personal stuff on a computer that's relatively locked down, and, you know, I at least make some effort to make a little bit more difficult to break into. You know, there's nothing I can do about having to have like Zoom and other required applications on my work computer. It's just an inevitability. But if I want to, I can virtualize them and have them running in a virtual environment that makes it less risky for my actual physical computer if something were to get compromised. So virtualization. Oh, Brandon's here. Virtualization is probably a great idea. By the way, everybody say hi to Brandon. One of our former co-hosts, Brandon, is in the chat. It's so good to see you.
I just noticed.
How's Santa Cruz, Brandon? Brandon also used to live with us in where we live.
Totally just dox Brandon, and then you're like, oh yeah, but
whatever,
don't dox me.
Hey. So Zam points out that his WAPs are very offensive and tend to go after malicious actors. And yes, this is true. If you have a wireless access point that is set to be defensive, it will probably go after any intruders or anything that's not supposed to be on the network with deauthentication packets. And this can make people think that there's a hacker in the area doing all sorts of bad wireless stuff, when in fact it's just, you know, a feature of a wireless access point doing its thing. Yeah,
that's definitely been a bit of a learning curve with some of the enterprise or like prosumer kind of wireless products I've used in our house. Like some of them will have like very thorough firewalls or like honeypots that they'll put up on the local network and stuff like that.
Also, some good suggestions I just saw in the chat are browser extensions. So if you're going to be using, one of the first things I do when I get a new computer is install a couple browser extensions. Privacy Badger. Oh yeah, that was the first one they recommended too. uBlock Origin. Cookie Cleaner I don't use, but that sounds like a good idea. And then NoScript. NoScript is one of those divisive ones where Michael, I'm sure, will not use it. I use it and I put up with it, even though it breaks like every web page I load initially. But do I like having the choice between letting some random web page run arbitrary JavaScript or like at least getting a warning? Yeah, I do. And I find also most good websites will have like a JavaScript free alternative to route me to, like if I really want to. So like NoScript is one of those things that just like shuts down any JavaScript running on the page and will break most websites. But do I use it? Yes, I do, because I think after what I've seen about JavaScript exploits and after clicking on a tracking link or two, I can really see the difference between having JavaScript, run in your browser and extract information versus just being able to get the user agent when you go to a web page. Totally different. Like with JavaScript, you can tell what orientation the person's holding their cell phone in when they visit the website. Whereas with just an HTML request or like something where it's a very simple user agent that you're able to get from them, you might learn what kind of operating system they're running, but you're not going to learn much more aside from that. And one thing that I think is pretty remarkable too is like using JavaScript, you can get the GPU of a MacBook Pro that identifies the specific year it was made when that user goes to a website. Whereas if you disable JavaScript, you just all you know is that person is running a Linux-like computer and like they're running maybe like Chrome. So that's a huge difference in terms of the information you're giving away each time you go to a website, and I think it's worth the inconvenience. Michael might not agree with me because it is, as I said, very annoying.
Yeah, that's always the dilemma for me, particularly like in production and when you're doing a lot of computer stuff. Like security is obviously a huge concern, but there are times, when you're scrambling to get ready for a live stream 30 minutes before and nothing's working because of these extensions, that you get frustrated.
Well, one question we just had is, Cody, have you ever participated in a CTF? Great question. In fact, Brandon might be able to tell you a little bit more about that. Actually, the way that Brandon and I met was that we organized a cybersecurity CTF called the Chicken Man game for our local community college. So we got together and we had a couple of Raspberry Pis, which were running Kali Linux, and then we had an ESP8266, well, actually, a couple of them acting as access points that you could hack in order to get the password, log in. It would display like a web interface with a button, and if you pressed your team's button, the whole thing would light up with your team's colors. It was a nightmare to produce this. We did everything like real, nothing was simulated, so there were real access points that had then like another microcontroller joining them to like generate Wi-Fi handshakes, because if we actually used deauthentication packets, we were afraid that the college students would attack the wrong networks and get us kicked out of the university. So we had to make it so the game was about like putting your card into wireless monitor mode, capturing packets, and then cracking them. And we also made it so that you can attack each network like 3 separate times, because each time you get the password, it levels up and becomes more difficult. It was crazy, you guys. And then we got to do this game at the Layer 1 conference, which, oh, Brandon, we need to talk about Layer 1. Sorry, we need to call. Yeah. But we were able to do this at a security conference, and a bunch of people actually came over and got to compete, and we got to select one of them to win a prize. So yes, we have participated in the CTF. Actually, we didn't participate. I guess we did the CTF.
He ran a CTF.
We made and ran a CTF, but it was super cool. If you want to check it out, it's called the Chicken Man game. You can do it yourself. It's a little complicated, and I've made some more simple versions since then. But yeah, I think that creating examples where you can teach people a concept that's also fun to play is challenging, but definitely rewarding if you can find someone like Brandon to do most of the work.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did a live stream on the Chicken Man game. If we did, I'll drop the link in the description and put a card after this live stream. There was another question. Basically, do you recommend learning Python first for ethical hacking?
I would recommend learning networking and Linux stuff,
like Bash,
like Linux utility, like Bash and just like general Linux utilities, as well as Python or before Python. It's great to know Python, but you're not going to be writing very many cybersecurity tools yourself until you get like a computer science background. Like, you're probably going to be using other people's tools, which work perfectly well in like an attack flow that allows you to break into someone's computer and prove that you can. That's a pretty fundamental cybersecurity thing, showing someone that there's a vulnerability by demonstrating it. So in order to do that, like, you're not going to be like rewriting, the book on cybersecurity. You're going to be taking best practices, learning how to use those tools, and learning how to use them correctly in a context that makes sense. And also, frankly, like, a lot of this is communication. So explaining your findings to somebody else who might not be that interested, frankly, is really important as well. So if you can learn a bit about the way like Linux utilities work, learn about the way that networking works, the way that computers connect to each other, because that's really where the meat of this stuff kind of is, like in the way that computers are networked together, then I think that would give you a much better foundation for cybersecurity than just learning Python. Now, if you want to go the computer science route, I would recommend you learn a language like C++ for at least a couple, maybe like 6 months or so before moving on to Python, because it'll give you a better fundamental and foundational lower level understanding of programming. Python is great, but it allows you to skip so many steps and cut so many corners that I don't think that it's a good language to start out with if you're going to be doing computer science related stuff. And if that's not your focus in cybersecurity, then again, networking and Linux stuff is probably a much better place for you to start. That being said, it's great and fun, and it gets you started with programming. So if it's something you enjoy, or if you want to do stuff with reporting, data visualization, or you want to do anything like big data, that could be designing OSINT tools or working with APIs. All that stuff, Python is perfectly fine for. But like lower level stuff, Python kind of sucks for. It's like a wasteful language that like doesn't really take into account many of the subtleties of computer science. So like you'll just find that like Python's a messy language to program in, especially if you don't have a deeper fundamental understanding of computer science, and it's not going to give you that much of an advantage in cybersecurity.
That
being said, it is my favorite programming language. So
yeah, that's great. And we have a number of live streams on those subjects as well, like getting started using APIs with Python to do some research and stuff like that.
One question is, where do we buy our hacker stickers?
Yeah, I was about to give you that.
Yeah, so these are badges of honors. Some of these we actually make. So this one you can buy on like hack.gay. That's one that we made for our local meetup groups and stuff like that. But a lot of these, like this is like Debian. I picked this up from the Scale, the Southern California Linux Expo. This is the Women's WSC.
Cybersecurity, or wait, no.
Women's Society.
Yeah.
A women's group we work with extensively. This is Hackaday. We like to have people that we work with on here, and generally when we go to security conferences, which unfortunately we haven't been able to for a while, we load up on these stickers. So if you have local like Linux meetups, if you have local like any sort of like expo or anything where there's going to be a bunch of Linux people or hacker people, there will be stickers, lots of stickers. I think I got a lot of these stickers at the C3 conference in Germany. I got tons of these stickers at DEF CON. I got lots of these stickers, a relative amount of these stickers at Black Hat. And then we also got them from Scale locally, and Layer 1 also has some great stickers. So my number one, like if you can make it to a security conference, you don't have to pay for them. But also I would say the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, has excellent stickers that they give out if you donate to them. So if you want to support a great cause and get some hacker stickers that have some really great street cred, then the EFF is a great place to start. Also, I would say Bug Crowd and Hackeroni have some like unusually good...
He means Hacker One.
I've never heard it pronounced that way. But they have some unusually good stickers as well. I think I've got some... Oh yeah, this is a Bug Crowd Bug Bash sticker that I got from a bunch of like rowdy Bug Crowd researchers who had been flown in to hack a bunch of webcams in San Francisco for a weekend.
Yeah, when we were at RSA, Bug Crowd, I think it was, had a whole table of stickers, and it was hard for me to not just like swoop my arm across there.
Yeah, and this one just says clown computing, and as far as I know, you can't buy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No. So stickers are just one of those things where like, you show other hackers the stuff you're interested in. If you're like in a coffee shop or an airport terminal, you see somebody with a bunch of like offensive, no, I'm good. If you see someone with a bunch of like seriously offensive Wi-Fi stickers, you're like, damn, I'm going to turn my wireless radio off. Like this is maybe not a good time to be on Wi-Fi.
That actually feeds nicely into our next question, which is how do newbies stay safe when they first start off in cybersecurity? I wonder about doing something silly that might either get me compromised?
Yeah, so one of the problems is when you're starting out, you might be tempted to just run like random tools that you find with poor documentation that don't have very clear source code. So as somebody who might not be, the most advanced programmer, running some random cybersecurity or like hacking program you find online that has a backdoor is a very, very real possibility. So if you're just getting started and you want to do this sort of stuff in a more secure environment, I just really recommend virtualization and separating your work and personal stuff from any computer that you're doing cybersecurity research on. If you can have a virtual machine that is, what gets compromised, if something does in fact get compromised, you have a much smaller problem than if your core machine gets compromised and starts having your personal stuff and your work stuff get involved in whatever mistake that you've made. So I would just say be very careful about the tools that you run. Always make sure to check hashes if you want to be cautious. When you download a program from a website, make sure the hash matches. Make sure that you get the expected result when you download it, because there have been a lot of cases of people being attacked through these supply chain attacks where somebody will get access to the download site and swap out a file, and anybody that doesn't notice that it's been modified might get infected. So check the hash if it's available when you're installing a new program, and also just be smart about what programs you're running. If you're going to be installing Metasploit, that's a pretty safe bet if you install it from the correct website. It's very well documented. It's from a reputable company. That's a very low risk. But if you're, gonna go with directory FR69 off of GitHub, which has 2 stars and 7 issues, then you might have a problem. It's very likely that unless you go through the code line by line, there could be a backdoor or something that's doing something other than what it's proposed to do. And I have seen honey POCs. So, Michael, do you know what a honey POC is?
Yeah, it's a proof of concept, which is a honeypot in itself. So, if someone downloads and runs it, and then kind of along those lines, I would say, too, if you're getting a tool from, a guy on a forum and it's, hosted on some cloud provider or something, you definitely should be immediately at, level 10 sketched out, right? So, be careful there. And something I would kind of recommend that Cody was alluding to is you could follow our guide on running Cubes OS if you had an extra laptop. Something I like if you're absolute budget beginner is just get a Raspberry Pi and use that, because if you fry that, if you toast it, as long as you just keep it isolated, then you've lost what, $50 in that. But yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're using Cubes with Parrot, everything's going to be virtualized. You're also in for a ride. It's a very unique way of running a computer. So there's going to be not a ton of documentation for problems you might encounter in it. So just be aware of that. If you're going to go big paranoid, there's going to be big issues to solve at some point. But that's okay. That compromise of security versus convenience really is a personal decision to be made. I would just say you're going in the right direction when it comes to virtualization if you want to make sure your mistakes are minimized and don't propagate across your entire system.
Okay, so what about if someone wants to get started hacking on Windows with CMD or PowerShell? Where do you recommend they start?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
Sorry. So I'm not much of a PowerShell guy. We had Tim for that. Where's Tim? Tim's upstairs somewhere, but he's got a job now. So unfortunately, he's not around showing us as much PowerShell stuff as before. But yes, CMD hacking is a thing. PowerShell hacking is a thing. I am not that good at PowerShell hacking, but I can make a calculator pop up on Michael's computer.
Oh my God.
So I'm good enough to be able to schedule tasks and do some other basic stuff. And mostly I learned this in a networking class I had to do that teaches you how to set up domains and do stuff like that. So sorry.
As far as
I'm not that guy.
Where to start looking on our channel, look for the videos with Killian in them. So not the Q&A ones, but the ones where he's showing Cody how to do something. The macro one talks about, well, I guess that's Office macros. It doesn't really do the PowerShell as much, but the other ones do. And then there should be a playlist for PowerShell. If there's not, I will make that soon. But that'll be with Tim and a couple with Killian, I believe.
Yeah, that's great. So there was one question, which was how much OSINT is used in the hacking preparation process? Oh my God, so much.
And
So much.
So much, in fact, we might have an entire live stream on it very soon.
Yeah. So I guess we could show like just a quick little, like, so let's say that I
Should I go to your screen?
Yeah, go to my screen. Screw it, right? So let's say that I want to find out,
I think
that's
it
not my
froze.
screen.
Yeah.
Oh, it did freeze. Okay, well, all right. I'll have to restart that. But let's say that I have like a website that I don't really know that much about at all, and I want to be able to basically see like maybe if there's any email addresses associated with it, or I want to see if I can track down the technical infrastructure. It's actually super easy to do that, and the reason is with OSINT, we can just kind of follow whatever clues are there. So, all right, let's see if we can do it now. Can you guys see multego? Hey!
Yeah.
All right, so multego is a tool that allows you to take a couple like relatively small breadcrumbs and expand them into other clues. So if I wanted to do something really lazy, I could just run a machine, which is an automated series of searches that will bring in some information. I can say I want to run the company stalker, and I can specify any company that I want, any website that I want in order to start learning about them. So let's do Theranos.com, our good old standby. This now has malware on it, so don't go to it. But we'll go ahead and run this automated search. And as like an OSINT person, I can see, okay, we have a couple.
That makes some very interesting beeps. I'm
love
sorry,
it.
I just have to remark on that.
Yeah. So I find a couple email addresses associated with it, but really not that many. So
Okay.
we have a couple results here, and let's say that like as a hacker, I don't even want to bother hacking into Theranos. I just want to find people who have already been breached, and I just want to hack into their stuff using their passwords, which I'm pretty sure they probably haven't changed. So I can run a search. Let's say that I want to run the harvester. So this is a command line tool that lets me take any domain and it will scrape like the whole internet, like according to which sources I give it, trying to find different email addresses, contact information, LinkedIn profiles of people who work there, and other sorts of subdomains. So I can use this to then really dig in and know exactly where to target. But let's say, again, I'm lazy. I just take these email addresses, I paste them in, I'm gonna merge the ones that are the same. And what this does is gives me a big long list of people at this company who may have been compromised. So if I want to check all at the same time, I can just literally just highlight them all. And I think you guys have probably heard of Have I Been Pwned? Well, I can run a search that allows me to basically check all these email addresses in Have I Been Pwned and see have they been involved in data breaches. And here, like they all come back, and I can see, again, if I'm some lazy hacker that wants to go after, you know, employees at this company, and I don't want to bother with like phishing or like really anything that like takes too much time and energy, I can just do this, identify which employee has been breached the most. It looks like Elizabeth Holmes is not that great with cybersecurity. Who knew?
Or maybe she's been targeted a lot.
Yeah, or maybe she's been targeted a lot. But as these come in, it will tell us which accounts have been in a data breach and which ones have not. So if I click on this, it says not breached. I can, let's see, go to investigate, and I have some things like select neighbors, select parents. If I select parents, I can see that these email addresses have never been breached. They're not involved in data breaches. But all the ones that aren't highlighted have been involved in data breaches. So that's very funny to me. And I can see that some of the worst offenders are Elizabeth Holmes and D. Lester at Theranos.com. So I can even see the specific breaches they were involved in, and I can enrich those breaches to see whether or not they involved passwords. So that means if they did involve passwords, it would be worth my time to track down this data breach on the internet and see if I could just get access to it. So basically, like as a hacker, I just went from dang, I have to hack Theranos, to, oh, this employee's password is already on the internet. And the difference here was OSINT. So a tremendous amount of OSINT research goes into hacking because it lowers the difficulty level so low that, you know, provided you have the right information, theoretically, like a child could go and like, you know, Google search this data breach, look up, you know, the associated password and just try to log into the guy's account. If he uses the same password in many places, or if he uses a variant of the same password, it would be pretty easy to use that to break in. So OSINT is a critical component. It substantially makes any engagement much, much, much more easy, and it's probably the most important thing to invest in when you're beginning some sort of engagement as a red team or a hacker.
And if you're interested in learning more about multego in particular, we have a number of other live streams on that subject. We might even have a playlist. Don't quote me on that one, though.
Yeah, but I think we're going to do another thing on multego because they've
Yeah.
added a lot of transforms that allow you to pull in new data sources. So I want to show you guys in the near future some of the interesting new things you could do there because it's pretty cool.
And so if someone can't or doesn't want to use multego, what other tools might be available for OSINT?
The Harvester. So the Harvester is right here. This is a tool that allows you to just scrape information directly. Let's see. So in this case, if I just do, one thing I'll say about the Harvester is it's unpredictable. If you run the Harvester twice, the first time you might get like 60 results, and then the second time you might get 2 results. I have no idea why. But it's very simple. You run Python 3, the harvester.py, -d is the domain you're searching, so we're just looking for Theranos, and then -b is the data source. And there's a ton of data sources it pulls from. If you have API keys, you can add API keys to let it actively go out and grab from data sources that require that. But if you don't have an API key, you can just run it like this, and it will go ahead and like complain like, oh no, I can't get Census, I can't get GitHub, I can't get well, like whatever. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what Spizy is, but I don't have an API key for it. So you can see it's searching virus total, DNS dumpster. It's really like looking through a bunch of stuff. Oh, look at that. An exception has occurred. That's great. But it's going to go ahead and dig through all these things and attempt to bring back as much information as it can about this domain. Now, what it'll bring back is email addresses. It'll bring IP addresses associated with this domain, other subdomains, and also employees. So we can see lots of people who have mentioned Theranos in their LinkedIn profiles are now being brought back. So we can investigate whether or not these are employees that are worth checking out, or maybe phishing if we're a hacker. So I would say the Harvester is a classic tool that works, as I said, a little unpredictably, but quite well. So if you're looking to get started with OSINT and just want to run a command line tool, you can run this in Google Cloud Shell, for example. Like it's a very, very easy tool to run and generally brings back pretty good results if somewhat inconsistently.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you explain the process of doing a penetration test on a target? Like, is it from reconnaissance to penetration, or is there a lot more steps?
So in general, like I'm generalizing a lot when I do this, but in general, there will be like a period of scoping where it's agreed like what is allowed to attack and what is not allowed to attack, so what's in and out of scope. After that, there'll be an investigation using OSINT to determine like what the footprint of the target is and determine, you know, what is the best plan of action here based on what is out there. Once you have the information to make a plan, you'll make some sort of plan of action to take advantage of a flaw that you found, whatever the lowest hanging fruit or the easiest way in would be. That could be a phishing attack against an employee that's like notably sloppy and involved in tons of data breaches, or maybe an employee that you have tons of context to be able to send a phishing email to. Or it could be a technical vulnerability. Maybe they just haven't patched something, or there's something wrong with a version of their software, and you're able to find it. There's tons of abandoned web pages or abandoned domains that just aren't maintained or are forgotten about and are publicly available, but just not really obvious, I guess. So these are all things that you'll typically find in that part of the engagement. And then once you actually do whatever exploit you're going to run, you either get caught or you don't. And if you don't get caught, then you'll submit a report that includes some sort of proof that you did do what you were claiming to be able to do. If it's not immediately obvious, like computers aren't like flashing with like your like hacker name or something. And if you did get caught, then you tell the blue team that they did a good job and explain what you were trying to do and how they stopped you. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think that's just about all the time we have for today. So if there's any...
Wait. No. There was one question I wanted to answer. So we had one question on the show that was about obfuscation. So they're like, hey, like how do you evade incident like IDS or like whatever? And one thing that I watched a really interesting talk on that is surprisingly simple and like I kind of can't believe works is packing. So zipping or packing is basically taking something that would like definitely be caught by a virus scanner and like zipping it and then zipping it again and then maybe zipping it again. And then really you like depending on the way you're zipping it, whether it's encrypted, like in a lot of cases, it doesn't even need to be encrypted because most antivirus or like incident intrusion or whatever will only look at a particular signature or a particular file like a couple levels deep. And beyond that, it's too computationally expensive for them to like unpack every single thing that they find. So there were some really interesting studies into how much packing it takes to hide like a file that is like, you know, obviously malicious and would be caught like 100% of the time. Like, what do you really need to do in order to disguise or hide or transport that? And the answer, it seems, is really not that much, because even somebody just like zipping is perfectly capable of evading some of the standard incident intrusions or virus scanners out there, which is really interesting. And one question was, what's my favorite hacking podcast? The dude who does Darknet Diaries is such an excellent storyteller. Like, I don't know another podcast that can like keep me on the edge of my seat, like while I'm listening to a story that I like understand. So I would have to say I really like Darknet Diaries.
Awesome. Yeah.
Please explain, what is Active Directory? Why are you punishing me? Active Directory is so complicated.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe another time. Although there is a great video called "A Cat Explains Active Directory" by Nil. If you want to check out how Active Directory works, Nil's excellent. But Active Directory is very complicated, and Nil explains it much better than I do. So shout out to Nil for his excellent Active Directory video.
Yeah. And also, please don't spam in the future.
Yes. Also, please don't spam in the future. And Brandon also likes Darknet Diaries. Yeah. Cool. I know Brandon's a big podcast buff, so if it gets the old nod from Brandon, then it's got to be good.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that now we actually are out of time. And by the way, I was going to say, that's a very handsome hat you're wearing today.
Oh, yes. The tiny space hoon.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys knew this, but our friend Stefan recently started making beanies, and
I think I can.
Michael was cited by Border Patrol on the U.S. border wearing one of these. So I feel like some poor analyst had to potentially look to find out if this was like a terrorist symbol, which it is not. It's a chicken. But anyway, if you like the beanie, I believe Stefan is now selling them on spacehoon.store. But
yeah,
nice little cameo for the beanie there. All right, so. Everyone knows you're a podcast buff, Brandon. That's going to do it for today. Thank you so much to our former and now currently exiled co-host, Brandon, for joining us. And our last exiled co-host. It's like a co-host reunion.
Yes.
That's so great. We haven't seen any of these bros for a long time.
Bros.
All right. We will we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for joining us for this live version of Hacking with Friends. And yeah, bye.
Bye.